Okay, class, this evening we're going to be talking about Go Math Lesson 7.6, Fraction Multiplication. And our essential question for today is, how do you multiply fractions? So let's take a look at our Unlock the Problem. Sasha has 3/5 of a scarf left to knit. If she finishes 1/2 of that today, how much of the scarf will Sasha knit today? Well, we know the first thing that we need to do when it comes to word problems is we need to underline the question that we need to answer. And the question within this word problem is, how much of the scarf will Sasha knit today? All right, we also have to pull out our key information or our key numbers. So it says Sasha has 3/5 of a scarf left. That's how much she has left. If she finishes 1/2 of that today, how much of the scarf will she have? So let's look over here in our green box and let's take a look at the two questions that we need to answer. So it says, how much of the scarf does Sasha have left to knit? Well, if we look back over here at a word problem, it says 3/5 of a scarf left to knit. So the answer to that one is 3/5. Our second question is, of the fraction that is left, how much will she finish today? Well, let's look back over in our word problem. If she finishes 1/2 of that today, so the answer to this one is 1/2. Now, one way that we can use to solve this is to use a model. So we're going to be taking a look at our model down here. So the very first step, it says, is to shade 3/5 of the model yellow. So if we notice, we have our model is divided into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts, which is where our denominator comes from. And it says to shade 3/5 of that, or 3 out of 5. So let's go ahead and shade 3 pieces of our 5 yellow. So if you notice, we now have 1, 2, 3 of our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces that are shaded yellow. So the next one says to draw a horizontal line across the rectangle to show 2 equal parts. Well, we know horizontal runs this way, so we're going to draw a horizontal line to divide it in half this way. Now the next one says to shade 1/2 of the yellow sections blue. So we have to come up here, since we have it divided into 1/2 there and 1/2 here, we have to shade this half of the yellow sections blue. So let's go ahead and do that. Now I do want to point out that since we divided this in half right here with this line, we no longer have our 5 pieces. We now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now let's count the sections that are shaded twice and write a fraction for the parts of the whole that are shaded twice. So we now have these up here that have been shaded twice, and that would be 1, 2, 3. So that's going to be our numerator. And out of, we just counted them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So our new denominator is going to be 10. So it now says to compare the numerator and denominator of the product, which is the answer to a multiplication problem, with the numerators and denominators of the factors, which are the numbers that we multiply together to get our product. Describe what you notice. So the one thing that we noticed when we compare the numerator and denominator of the product with the numerators and denominators of the factor is that the numerator of the answer is the product of the numerators of the factors. The denominator of the answer is the product of the denominators of the factors. So 1 times 3 equals 3, that is the product of our two factors, and 2 times 5 equals 10, which is the product of our denominators. Another way that we can solve this is to use paper and pencil. So you can multiply fractions without using a model. So the very first step is to multiply the numerators. So we know that 1 times 3 equals 1 times 3, and that 2 times 5 equals 2 times 5. So 1 times 3 equals 3, because the identity property of multiplication says any number multiplied by 1 is that number. And 2 times 5 equals 10. So Sasha will knit 3/10 of the scarf today. Now we're going to look at another example, keeping in mind that we write our whole number as a fraction with a denominator of 1. So we are to find 4 times 5/12, and we're going to write the product in simplest form, which can also mean to write it in mixed number. So the very first thing that we do is we take our whole number of 4 and we put it over the 1. So then we know that 4 times 5, and 4 times 5 is 20, multiplying our numerators together. Then we're going to multiply our denominators, and our denominators are 1 and 12. And 1 times 12 is 12. And we have our answer of 20/12. So we'll put our 20/12. Now we're going to divide our 20/12 by a number in order to simplify it. Now if we keep in mind of our factors, we know that the factor of 4 is a factor of 20 and a factor of 12. So 20 divided by 4 is 5. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So now in order to change 5/3, which is our improper fraction or fraction greater than 1, to a mixed number, we will take 5 in the house. Our denominator becomes our divisor, and 5 divided by 3 is 1. 1 times 3 is 3. Subtract that out, and we get a remainder of 2. So our answer becomes our whole number. Our remainder becomes our numerator. Our divisor becomes our denominator. So 4 times 5/12 is 20/12, or 5/3, or as a mixed number, 1 and 2/3. Now we're going to try throwing a little bit of algebra in on this. So let's take a look at our try this section. It says to evaluate C times 4/5 for C equals 5/8. So the very first question is, what number does C represent? Well, it tells us right here, C equals 5/8. So C represents 5/8. So we know that 5/8 times 4/5 is the same as our C times 4/5. So we replace C in their expression with the 5/8. Now the next step is to multiply the numerators. So we're going to take our numerators, which are 5 and 4, and multiply those together. And 5 times 4 equals 20. Now the next step is to multiply the denominators. So we'll throw our denominators in there, which are 8 and 5. And we know that 8 times 5 equals 40. Now the next step says to write the product in simplest form. Well, this one's kind of one of those easy ones. So we just kind of have to find out what we can divide by both 20 and 40. And we know that we can divide both 20 and 40 by 20. So whatever we do to the numerator, we do to the denominator. And that's 20 divided by 20 is 1. 40 divided by 20 is 2. So C times 4/5 is equal to 1/2. For C equals 5/8. All right, so let's look at our question on the bottom. Since 4/5 is being multiplied by a number less than 1, should the product or the answer to our multiplication problem be greater than or less than 4/5? Explain. And the answer is it should be less than 4/5. A fraction less than 1 multiplied by a fraction less than 1 will result in a product less than either factor because I am finding a part of a part. We're not multiplying two wholes. We're not multiplying by a whole. We are multiplying a part by a part. And lastly, don't forget to write down your password for this evening's lesson. Password is going to be a little bit different than normal. I don't necessarily want you to solve this problem. Your password is going to be to explain to me why we want you to put the whole number over 1 when multiplying a whole number by a fraction. So explain why we want you to put the whole number over 1 when multiplying a whole number by a fraction. Don't forget to write that down and bring it with you to class tomorrow.